Yeah, me too.
I mean, it is an effective fan service teaser. So in
Yeah,
that regard, it is
yeah,
good.
I was far more interested with the first teaser that showed me nothing than I was this one, which is weird.
Yeah,
But
it is a little weird.
Well, no, it's like the difference between like somebody who's like left a lot to the imagination
mhm.
than like somebody like shows you everything. Where it's like, oh, okay. It's
Thanks, guy.
it's like a mystery box.
Get out. I wish I could. I wish I could see you right now.
I really hate the poster though, because it's a picture of LA, but with a Star Trek symbol made out of roads on it. I get that the theme is the road not taken, but like,
Also, LA is like the worst city you could possibly imagine for like a Star Trek future.
it's also like one of the only cities we've not. It's like not the city you see in the future, even though presumably it exists. Um,
You know, that would actually be kind of funny if LA doesn't exist in the future in Star Trek.
even though when they shoot locations of things in Star Trek, it is LA, like basically everywhere, like the entire show forever.
Yeah.
It's been like, oh, we need an exterior shot. Here's a place in LA. We'll shoot.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, what? Oh, we need something outdoors. Let's do a desert thing. So let's like drive 2 hours. Yeah.
LA.
Let's drive like 2 hours, and we'll get all the shots we need.
It's like the character that we never see, but we've actually seen it like hundreds of times in the show. It's really weird. Oh, anyways, I think we're live.
Yeah.
Welcome to Red Shirt Checks.
Kenny, you psychopath! Just tell us.
No.
I'm one of your hosts, Kyle Nelson.
Never, never, never.
I'm your other host, who's angry, Trevor Law, who is angry at the producer, Kenny Ship.
Hey, you know this is a possibility.
And yeah, guess what? Guess what? I just did your announcement for you. I just did your intro for you. You don't get an intro this week.
Fine. Your screen's going to black, sir. Deal with it.
Fine.
Give me a disembodied black box.
Fine. I have a better voice for radio. I have a face made for radio anyway.
You think I
But
won't
not
Oh,
do
an
it?
audio for it.
No, I know you will. No,
Just did.
okay.
He'll be embodied by this. I should take a picture of my Manhattan, and then that will be Trevor's picture. Chaos already.
Oh.
We haven't even been here 2 seconds.
Right. So we've got a little bit of Star Trek news, and then we're going to dip into our most recent review, our first into Berman era Trek, Star Trek Generations. So to start with, I guess I'm not going to say much about it, but Star Trek Prodigy, we got casting news. We know the full cast, who's going to be in it, and the species and the name of the characters, and a little bit of biographic information. Jason Mantzoukas, I think that's how you say his name, is really the only one I'm excited about, partly because I don't really know.
Yeah, he's known as a crazy guy in at least 2 different shows that I like. So
Yeah, and he's been doing a lot of like cartoon voice work for a while too. Like he's popped up in DuckTales and stuff like that. So it's not unusual for him to like jump into some animation. So that's cool.
I will say this though: the species mixing and where the show is going to be taking place geographically has me like, what are they going for?
I really don't know. And that's kind of interesting. So, anyways, I hope it's good. There's some stills out that they released in the show, and the animation looks beautiful, which I was shocked by. I honestly, when I hear a show that's going to be made specifically for children, like we've not really had that with Star Trek, so I didn't really know what to expect exactly. But when I think of big franchise, make cartoon for children, I figure we're going to cheap out and we're going to make a really mediocre tie-in so that we can kind of hook children into the funnel. But it seems like they're actually putting in a lot of effort to this.
And when I saw like Long Legs Janeway, I was not it didn't give me a lot of confidence.
Yeah, it doesn't
little...
inspire confidence.
Yeah, like Janeway's like 70% legs.
Yep, and that's not even an exaggeration, really.
Yeah, it's not. But the other news is, how about that Picard trailer?
So we got to see Q in his new queued up look.
And hey, John DeLance, you've aged well.
He's aged well.
The community's loving it.
He cleans up well.
Memes are out there. I'm just I'll leave it at that.
I am curious to see if Q will answer why he's aged. Like, is he just saying like I'm curious if they're going to answer that or if they're just going to just ignore it.
I want to see. I want it to be like he pops, like he shows up as old Q and is sort of like, oh hey, look at me. Well, you've aged, Captain. So I guess I'm gonna match you up there.
Yes,
I want to see him like screw with him a little bit and maybe do a little bit of de-aging just as like a gag, and then go back to like old Q.
That's what I'm hoping too. Like that's the kind of thing I'm hoping. Like he's like, well, I want to look out. Like he like shows up like looking like young Q in like the captain's uniform from TNG era, and it's like, oh, this is.
We're not doing this now, are we?
All right. I got to match you. And then he turns into old John DeLance, which that's what I want. I want that. I need that.
Yeah, something like that would be good.
Like it's for one scene in special effects. Like you guys can afford it.
I mean, they did so much de-aging, like with Data. Like, yeah, they have the money for that. They can do a de-aging gag.
Yeah, and they can like do that like maybe once or twice across the season. Like,
I mean, they could honestly do a lot. Like,
yeah,
they've got a budget for the show. One of the things that is interesting that like you don't know from the trailer, but they have reportedly been filming season 2 and 3 back to back.
Interesting.
So they're shooting and they originally were not going to do that, but the plan was for season 2. And reportedly, this is rumor, but this is fairly consistent and from credible sourcing. But the rumor is that essentially season 2 and 3 was designed to be one story, and that they were going to be split up, but because of COVID, it got pushed back, and so now they're just going to film both together and get season 2 and 3 done, and just release them like a year apart, like normal.
Yeah, I mean, because once you get everybody there on a set,
yeah, you might as well get everything done and reuse as many sets as you can.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, but yeah, so that'll be interesting. I think I know a lot of people weren't excited, and I'm not particularly excited about the trailer. But when I heard, I don't remember what character said it. I think it might have been Picard or something, but someone said that time is broken, and I was like, all right, I'm here. I'm in. I'm locked in. So time is broken. We're just doing all good things again. Like, sure.
The road not taken.
Yeah, it's like, all right, so we're gonna do an alternate, like let's take the 2 best Q episodes, like All Good Things and Tapestry, and we'll just throw them in a blender, and we're just gonna make a whole like season or 2 out of it. Great, I love it.
And like that I really wish they had more of the TNG cast with them for doing that, because there's a lot of like very painful things they could do.
Well, it's not. Yes, it's
I'm painful in a good way, like very interesting. Mainly Worf. I would like to see Worf go through that.
Yeah, like that kind of gets into a lot of the problems I have with the movie we have done a rewatch for. I'm not trying to steer us into that conversation yet, but there is endings are hard. And like you have to make choices and you have to stick to them and you have to make sure that they work. And you have to really commit to an ending. And with an ensemble product, that is even harder because
Mhm.
you don't just have like one protagonist ending that you've got to make work. You've got 6 or whatever. So that's one of the things that makes All Good Things work so well as like a series finale is we get that past, present, and future. We get to see the characters as they are now, the characters as they started, and like one possible future of how the characters could end. And through that, you can sort of see the arc of the character over the course of the work.
And everybody gets to like shine, and
everybody gets a moment, and you get to see that progression and that evolution, and how things, if they go wrong, could go one direction, but we've sort of had that warning, and so now we can correct that, and you can infer that now the future is going to be better because now they know, how that future could go, even though they technically don't actually remember that alternate future.
yes,
As when All Good Things wraps up, they just have this, like, Picard just has this vague sense of he needs to change who he is, and we get that inference that this means he's going to be a better person, and that future sad Picard isn't going to exist. And honestly, that was a really good capstone for that character, and it's like Picard's been painful for me to watch because I feel like it has been going back through to that very well-trod ground and like undoing a lot of that finality. And in the same way, Generations does that with Kirk. And it's like the primary reason why I loathe a lot of the things that this movie does.
so we need to pause there.
All right.
We're talking about Generations, Star Trek Generations.
First of the Next Generation movies.
The first of the Next Generation.
Of the original series movies.
And I think it would be fair to say the most controversial of all Star Trek movies.
I don't think that's true. Like, I think that...
When I say controversial, I mean... It's very easy to look at it and call it a good movie, and it's very easy to look at it and call it a bad movie if you are selective in your memory.
Okay, I can understand that.
Because like the first hour of that movie is great. It's an excellent movie. Yeah,
exactly what we were talking about before. I think we were doing it offline before you got on.
And then like the last 30 minutes of that movie are just a dumpster fire.
It's the last act. It's
the
last like 40 minutes.
And you're just like you just feel like you've taken a crazy pill.
It has some of the worst third act problems of almost any movie I've seen. It's like, and it's not just because, oh God, there's so many reasons why it doesn't work, but we'll get into that. I think it'll probably work. I think this discussion will probably work better if we separate it out a little bit differently from the ones we've done before, and if we go by act.
I was thinking the same thing. Like, we need to sort of talk about, we can't just break it up like the cinematography and the acting.
Well,
we got to break it up.
I'll front load that conversation here for the overall. I feel like on a technical level, like directing and cinematography, production design, I feel like it works and it's very good on the whole, with the exception of the uniforms. I know one of us has had some thoughts about uniforms.
It was changing from scene to scene.
I didn't notice.
My brain was getting angry. I was like, didn't I just see you in your original? Okay, now you got the DS. Wait, but then Riker? What's going on? Is that one bright purple? That's not the gray I'm used to. Like, what is going on? And then I was messaging Kyle on our thread. I was like, maybe it's the color grading. Maybe that's what's driving me nuts. Even as on top of just the uniform switching, it's just like, maybe this is popping more purple than it should be just for this. But normally that shirt wouldn't be that bright. And I hate to even nitpick it like that, but since I'm already was getting frustrated with the film, those are things that just I can't let go anymore. It's just like, and why? When did you have time to change that many times?
I know, like, the movie takes place over a very short period of time, so I don't particularly know why they change so often. In particular, Picard, he changes the most, and I don't know why.
That, that's weird. So there was something I noticed, and it was early on in the movie that like I had to immediately pause the movie and look it up. All right, so early on, Worf like he gets his little lieutenant commander thing, and he falls into the ocean.
Dumbest. It's
Yeah.
so dumb. I hate
Yeah.
that.
Okay, I don't care about that. However, so when Michael Dorn is like climbing up, his knees are bloody. Like his knees are completely red. And I was like, what happened? What did they do to you, Michael Dorn? So I had to look it up. And it's not blood, it's paint. Because they had freshly painted the side of the ship. And like Michael Dorn like bumped into the ship several times. And so he was getting paint. And in particular, when you're climbing something, what's going to be one of the first things you get covered? So it was paint. Michael Dorn was fine. They did not mutilate his knees like they tried to mutilate his face with the Worf makeup.
God, that's really funny. So I found the controversy around the uniforms in this particularly interesting from two levels. So from like a canon in-universe level, I've always kind of really enjoyed that because this is the only time we get to see that switch in uniforms between eras in Trek. And it's really fun to see this melding of the old style, like Next Generation uniform, and what becomes the new style Deep Space Nine / Voyager uniform,
which lasts for 2 years.
Well, so it lasts in Deep Space Nine for 4.5 seasons.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
for 4.5 years.
And in Voyager, it's for the whole 7 seasons. This is actually, that uniform is the uniform we see the most throughout all of Star Trek. That uniform appears in the most episodes overall. And one of the fun things is that another thing we get to see the new comm badge. This is the movie that the Voyager comm badge appears in, and that was designed by John Eves. This is probably the movie we start to see John Eves' contributions the most in. He's the guy who ends up designing the Enterprise E, and he's designed the Discovery in Star Trek Discovery. He's done a lot of designs and a lot of production stuff. But that's one of the more enduring like logos of Star Trek is the Delta from this movie. Like in Star Trek Picard, like when he goes to his comm badge, it's that comm badge that he has. It's not the TNG Rick Sternbach comm badge. It's the John Eves comm badge, which I find interesting. So there's a lot of things like in canon that I find like really interesting as to what all that means and how Starfleet may or may not like update or change their uniforms.
It's utterly madness that an institution would change their uniforms after 5 years completely.
Well, but the thing, it's not.
If an institution does that in the real world, that just means that institution is run by madmen. Yeah.
So, U.S. Army, you just ask your roommate.
No, we were talking. I was talking to him about it. Like some of those uniform changes made sense. Like for field situation stuff, I was much more like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But the idea of like nothing. It's just like we got to flip the colors. We got to flip the colors, and this needs to go from gray to purple.
Well, but that's not just that though. Like you could see both in storytelling perspective, but also in canon universe, the DS9 Voyager uniforms are just much more functional uniforms than the others. They have pockets. They are jumpsuits. They have like layers. There's much more utility to them than the prior TNG uniforms. So like both from a storytelling, because like the reason why they were designed that way is specifically because Deep Space Nine is a dirty station, and they want it to be the station that people can roll their sleeves up. It's supposed to be more gritty and grounded, and so the uniforms were designed to mimic, say, like NASA coveralls, and so that ended up going forward was how they were, and they were modestly redesigned, but over the years, but essentially, like, this is the form that they stayed in. Now, the other part of this that I find really interesting about the uniforms is from a real world situation, what happened was, and we have pictures of it that we've pulled up, they actually had completely different uniforms planned for this movie that had been designed and that had been created and mocked up, that was supposed to be the movie uniforms. There have been different reasons stated as to why they did not end up using these in production. Some have said that it's because they just did not look good on camera. They did not look cinematic. Because the whole idea is that this is the first TNG movie. We want to do something that is cinematic, and we want to do something that looks new and good. And they just didn't work. Another thought that came out was that they were changing too much because they had a new comm badge and all this other stuff, so they didn't want to like disrupt it too often. But if you look at them, they actually came out with a line of toys, and we've got the picture up now. Is the only like real proof that this happened, because the toys came out and they didn't tell them this. So if you got any of the TNG toys as you were a kid for Generations, they have that uniform that was supposed to be in the movie that didn't end up making it. And if you look at, say, the Lower Decks uniforms, they seem to be very clearly inspired by this like alternate movie uniform that never made it onto the screen. And so because of that, they did not have enough uniforms for everybody. Because they were like trying to be more cinematic and trying to show this transition to a new uniform. And so they had to borrow uniforms from Deep Space Nine that was not filming, because they shot this during the summer of 1994. So they literally end up borrowing, like, Jonathan Frakes is wearing Avery Brooks's uniform, and apparently the sleeves were not long enough for Frakes, so he had to like push up the sleeves the entire time he's wearing it.
And there's sometimes where you see the purple really
and it's so ill-fitting. Like, it's obviously like a poorly fitted suit.
Yeah, because it's not fitted at all. It's someone else's. They didn't have time. They only had 10 days from the time that they got done filming All Good Things to filming Generations.
That's insane.
And they only shot the movie for 52 days.
I don't understand why they didn't just shoot. Why they did just not shoot a finale for TNG and just made the movie the finale.
They only had 6 months to make this movie from beginning to end, from pre-production to finished product delivery.
What the hell was Paramount thinking?
Insane.
But here's the thing. This is the reason why. So the reason why is Voyager was going to begin filming in September of 1994, and they did not have other lots to film Voyager on, so they were going to have to blow up all of the, literally like tear down and destroy all of the old TNG sets so that they could build all the Voyager sets. So because they were going to house all the Voyager sets on the TNG sets, which, by the way, were also the sets for the motion picture, for Star Trek: The Motion Picture, because they're the same sets. Like the tube, like the warp core in Voyager is the same warp core from the motion picture, and TNG they just put a shroud over it, a different shroud over it.
Like they couldn't just put they couldn't. Somebody couldn't have just looked at it like, man, this is really tight on the schedule on the set. We should probably push this back 6 months or a year.
But that's the thing. It would have cost money, and that would have meant that they would not have had a. I guess this is from a production decision. Like they only had like 6 months to do this, and they were going and to get the budget to where they needed it to be. They needed to use the existing TNG sets for the
So
movie.
they kill Kirk in a movie they made in 6 months.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it's
That's
it's wild. It's also why there's not one, not two, but four graphics reuses in this movie from prior Star Trek things. Both the
that's why it's not Romulans, isn't it? That's why they had to use a Klingon bad guy.
The bird of prey explosion, right?
The bird of prey explosion was literally from Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country. When the ship. There's also a shot where they're escaping from the Amargosa Observatory, and it's literally a cut and reversed shot of Chang's ship doing a U-turn from Undiscovered Country. And then they reuse the captain's log sequence where he's saying the log and the ship's doing the flyby. It's the standard TNG show flyby shot that they always use in the show. And the saucer separation was also from the pilot.
Cheap
that explains so much of why this movie is not good.
They only made it for like $30 million in 1994.
Why were they so committed to making it as cheap as possible?
Because, and this I think will make the movie make a lot more sense to a lot more people. This movie isn't so much a like cinematic movie as it is a made-for-TV movie that was released in theaters.
That doesn't help.
I'm not saying that it makes the movie better.
No, so they wanted to kill Kirk in a made-for-TV movie.
Okay,
that's what I keep hearing.
But that would be like a bad holiday special, something that you could hand wave easier. You're like, well, that was a dumb episode. Or that was okay.
Yeah.
Clear the that didn't happen.
Yeah,
that didn't
like the Mark Twain episode with the time guys where they go back in time
with
Mark Twain and Guinan's there for some reason.
Yeah. Like Guinan is in 1900 and like 1898 San Francisco.
I think it's timeless. I think that's the episode.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a fun episode. It's not good, but it's fun. I enjoy it, but
as long as you don't think about it,
you don't need to think about it too hard.
Don't think about it.
So production was crazy. They ended up trying to get Leonard Nimoy to do the movie, but he wouldn't because Nimoy like shepherded the movies. He wasn't just a director. He wasn't just a guy you gave a script and had him shoot it. Like he was he was
going to have his fingers involved in every aspect of the movie.
Nimoy's not an auteur, but he wants to make a good product. Like he wants to make art. And that's not to say that David Carson, who ended up directing it, does not make art or anything, but he was a TV director.
I do not blame the director for this movie.
I don't either. As a matter of fact, I feel like if you read a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, his instincts were right in a lot of cases. I feel like from a technical perspective, this is a really solid movie. The cinematography is great. Like Carson was able to recruit the guy who shot Chinatown for this movie. And so it looks great. Like
it does look great.
The movie looks great. It's shot well. It's well acted.
There's a shot that comes to mind immediately about the emotion chip with Data and Geordi. Again, how he's got them kind of split on both sides of the chip and got them really kind of, not without he's not really cutting back and forth. Kind of got a nice little pan between both of them as they're both heightening the situation of this could be great or it could also be terrible. Excellent, fantastic.
Yeah, and just some of the things I really love about the way that the movie is shot in comparison, because obviously we have a really good comparison with 7 seasons of the show, so we know what this ship looks like in and out. And one of the problems I've always had with TNG versus some of the other shows is that I feel like the Enterprise in that never really felt lived in. Like there's always stuff everywhere, but it never really felt like people actually lived there. But in this movie, it feels real. Like the lighting feels more realistic than it did in the show. And they're able to do a lot more with it. And in particular, what comes to mind for me is the Ready Room scene where, Picard's looking out the window at the star, and then the scene where Picard is talking to Deanna Troi about Renee's death. And the really darks and like the really warm sun tones, just fantastic. And like there's a blocking of his movement where he's talking about how he feels about Renee and about the family line, and how the Picards are going to die because he never had a family, and he walks back and he stops in shadow, and then he comes back, and when he's talking about like processing that emotion, and just the way that the whole thing is shot and done, it's really good from a technical level. I think the movie looks, oh god, in the Soren scene with Picard and Soren and Tin Forward, that's the other one that really stands out to me. I just really love all the warm lighting in this movie. I love a movie with warm lighting and like good solid blacks. I'm a sucker for that.
I just why I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's gonna keep that keeps just that's the only word that keeps popping up into my head for a lot of this movie.
All right, so I guess let's get into Act 1.
Real quick,
so Act 1.
Shout out to Jenna and Tom for liking the stream. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yay!
So, Act 1. I can't remember where Act 1 ends. Let me look at it.
But so like all the stuff in the Enterprise B, I liked, and I really liked how it felt like it mirrored the motion picture almost. And because the captain, he really did, he kind of visually looked like a Seventh Heaven dad, and he like had that very like inexperienced like. But I need to make a comment about some world building about Starfleet.
Okay.
If Starfleet could just have at least one fully functioning vessel near Earth, that would be fantastic. Because not one, but 3 movies' plots hinge on the Enterprise being the only ship close to Earth.
Not just that, but also the DS9 two-parter, Homefront and Paradise Lost, where the Lakota which is also the same model as the Enterprise B, where the Lakota is the only ship in the Earth system that the Defiant has to go against.
And it's just like, could you have more than one ship around Earth? Like, just, like, it's a consistent thing.
Yeah, Starfleet literally has hundreds of ships.
Thousands. They have thousands of ships.
I'm not sure in this period, but they have lots and lots of ships. So there's no reason, and there's no possible way that they only.
Our militaries do that with just fighters, knowing we have to have alert fighters for just if something should happen.
Yeah, and it's just madness. Please stop doing this, Star Trek writers. For the love of God, stop. Like, there's other sectors of space that you can do this in, but not around effectively the Washington, D.C. of the Federation. The Moscow, the Beijing.
It's the capital of the Federation.
Okay.
Like,
or say the other ship got destroyed. Our first alert ship got destroyed.
See, like in the motion picture, I'm fine with it, right? Because and like other ships, and in Voyage Home, it works really well too, because that probe screwed up everything. And so it was just dumb luck that Kirk and his bird of prey happened to be in the right place. Motion picture and Voyage Home, I'm fine with those. and Star Trek 3 it kind of works, and Star Trek 6, that they asked for Kirk specifically, and he's got to go there specifically, but.
Yeah, because Harriman, there's a moment in that prologue scene where they get the distress call, and Kirk stands up, and he's looking at Harriman, and he's like, we got to do it, we got to help him, and Harriman makes the call because he knows this ship is not ready. I do not have the medical staff. I don't even have a tractor beam. We can't.
This was literally a photo op cruise.
Yeah,
that was all this existed for.
Yeah, it's we can't do this. We are not ready.
We were circling.
Skeleton crew.
We were going around Pluto. We weren't even technically leaving the solar system.
Yeah, they're like, no, we're the closest one. We're the only ship that can answer.
What?
Fine.
What? So,
even possible?
Conspiracy theory time. Starfleet Command set all this up to kill Kirk once and for all. Just to get rid of him.
That would be genuinely hilarious.
Think
But yeah, I think the prologue sequence works really well.
It does.
I think it does a good job of setting up Kirk's arc of I could have had a family at some point, but I didn't make it matter. That wasn't important to me.
And it kind of fits well with how we left him in Star Trek VI, where he's just exhausted.
He's exhausted, and he's retired, and he doesn't know what to do with his hands.
Yeah. And he's still got he's still one of the best captains in Federation history. He's not stopped being that incredibly capable individual.
And the sequence works. It's weirdly enough, I kind of think it's one of the only bits in this movie that has any genuine tension. Because I feel like that's my primary problem with the movie, is that it does not have any tension during the vast majority of it. But it does in the prologue. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the ribbon is. We know nothing about the Enterprise B other than it existed. We know Scotty doesn't die here, but that's it. That's the only guarantee. This is all new to us. We don't know what's happening. And it works. The music works, the cinematography works. See Guinan and Soren.
Yeah. He said Shatner reacts really well, and I agree.
He's great. In the bit where Scotty leans over and is is there something wrong with your chair? It's a nice, wonderful little rib.
Yeah, I know what's going on with you. Sit down. Let the young people do their thing.
Yeah, I get it. I want us to be standing up and doing stuff too, but we're guests here.
Yeah, this is not our ship.
Yeah, we are retired. I have a boat to get back to.
Yeah. Presumably, all of their wives are angry that they even came here.
Right. But it does a good job of setting everything up. And then I think, personally, it gives Kirk, the best death that you could do for a character like him.
Agreed.
He saves the day.
He died saving the Enterprise B.
Yeah. He dies saving the Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't even have to be the B. Just any of them.
Yep, I agree. Also,
he saves people.
Here is a fun fact about this movie. It is the only Star Trek movie that has 3 different Enterprises in it.
What? What's the third one?
So you got the Enterprise B, the Enterprise D, and the USS Enterprise, the sailing ship, and the holodeck.
Yeah.
Get out.
I'm mad.
Well,
You're not.
hey,
You're not wrong.
there's one movie that has 2 Enterprises in it, and that's Star Trek IV, because the Enterprise aircraft carrier. So just
Anyways, I
feel like our users our watchers,
I guess while we're interjecting fun facts, so this was like the movie went through 4 drafts when it was in pre-production,
and presumably this is the worst one they could have come up with.
This is it. Like honestly, the drafts stayed pretty similar if you look at them through each one.
Oh, so
the opening, basically. This one received the most rewrites, primarily because they couldn't lock down the people that were supposed to be there, because originally it was supposed to be the entire original cast. Then that got pared back to just Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. But Nimoy wouldn't do it because he felt that they had already had a really good send-off for the character in Undiscovered Country. And he also said that basically there was nothing particularly Spock-like about any of the lines attributed to Spock, and that you could literally have any other character read them and it wouldn't change anything. And they did, in fact. Scotty's lines are basically the same as what Spock's lines were. So Nimoy was right.
I thought it was really weird that he sent Chekhov to the medical bay.
And so Bones was supposed to be Chekhov, and he DeForest Kelly so I've heard a couple different things. I've heard that from what I was reading, it was one of 2 things. Either he wanted to do it, but he couldn't do it because he couldn't get approved for the on-set insurance that you have to be on to film, and because he was just in such declining health by that point that he couldn't get insured, so they couldn't have him on set to film. Or it could be an Andor situation. When he heard that Leonard Nimoy wouldn't do it, he wasn't going to do it without him. Because it just wouldn't make sense for McCoy to be there and not Spock. And so they got Scotty and Chekhov to do it. Which, I mean, it works for the scene that they're the ones there. But
it feels more right for it not to be the big 3, if that makes sense. Like, these were the 3 that weren't doing anything.
Yeah, it's true.
That's what it feels like. Like, it really does feel like it feels like Spock is being an ambassador somewhere. It feels like McCoy is like one of the big wigs at Starfleet Medical, or maybe teaching at the academy or something.
Yeah, because we know that he becomes an
soon is on the fast track to being an admiral somewhere. Yeah. And so it feels. I like that.
So it makes sense, and it also, in a weird way, kind of as much as this movie actually presents some serious canonical issues for Kirk specifically, it does kind of jibe, weirdly enough, with Star Trek V in Kirk's bit where he's like, I knew I wasn't going to die there because you 2 were with me, because I always knew that I would die alone. Like, it jives with that in a really weird way.
It does.
For it to connect with, it's Star Trek V.
Yeah, that foreshadowing.
Yeah, it works as a kind of effective foreshadowing in a really depressing way.
Yeah, on a couple of levels.
Yeah, so the prologue takes us out into the first act, which is in the 24th century, and that act ends at once the Amargosa star blows up and the Duras sisters run away with Geordi. So yeah, what do we think about this opening?
Opening's great. I'm just gonna start going through the scenes because
do that real quick. My last thing on the opening. I feel like it's invalidated by the end. I would honestly rather than just lob that off, take Kirk out, and I'll get to that more when we get to Kirk's final, the scene's coming up to the end. But I think, again, this is a great scene. But I would have rather than just take it out and you rework this ending without Kirk. Just try to, because I think you could save a lot. But yeah, structurally, I really have no problem with the prologue. Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so Worf becoming Lieutenant Commander. It's weird that this seems to be a tradition for Starfleet, where they're on the sailing ship, the ancient Earth sailing ship.
The tradition that we've literally never seen
or heard of before. That's weird. Also, tidbit. for anybody watching Generations, if you've ever seen, so Worf falls into the ocean, and then like you see him like climbing up, and then Beverly Crusher lands on her way back down. I find that bit hilarious. I actually genuinely love it, even though it makes no sense.
Why would that
not
be funny?
Because it's all a holodeck. Like when she walks out of the holodeck, she won't even be wet.
Yeah, like I just don't.
That's the thing that bothers me the most about this entire scene is that it doesn't make any sense. It's a reference to. It feels like a reference to something that we've never seen before, never heard of before. Like this is supposed to feel familiar to us, but it doesn't feel familiar to us at all.
Yeah.
And then it's like the whole scene is designed to set up tension that is never followed up on really in any significant way. It's just a weird scene.
Cause you think that like there's going to be some big command moment for Worf. That they're like,
or like that the tension between him and Beverly for like is supposed to, and just nothing happens. It just there.
Worf and Crusher are barely even in this movie.
I will say I've never identified more with Riker than in this scene where Picard is just like it's so wonderfully like
it's retract the plank, not remove the plank.
It's not even that. It's the part where Picard's like, "This is freedom, Will," and he's like,
no, "What are you talking about?
No women. Like, why would anybody want to do this?
This is terrible. This is objectively awful.
Time ever. Why would we want to change that?
We go to new star systems,
right? I don't get keel hauled because I looked at somebody else.
I can eat all the fruit I want.
He's like, and you don't have to eat the fruit to prevent scurvy.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like, why would anybody willingly do this? Like, it's just so dumb. But yeah, I feel like.
So anyway, Michael Dorn's bloody knees.
Oh yes.
So like Michael Dorn, like he looks like he's got super bloody knees, and I was like, did Michael Dorn get hurt on this set? Because that's a lot of blood. It's paint, for those of you wondering. For those of you who saw that too, and they painted the side of the ship, and so like it's just paint, and he just ruined a pair of pants that they never used again. And I really like hearing. There's a lot of set issues with this movie, but.
I love the implication of after they leave this and then they're like on the bridge dealing with things is that like, so I understand they do that for continuity's sake because people would be wondering why they're not in their nautical uniforms and but like it then implies that, oh, they must have a dress up wardrobe somewhere with all their dress up clothes.
Well,
they have a closet.
So, like,
for the imagination station.
What I always assumed, though, is that, which to me is actually a little weirder, is that they all like had to like program into the replicator their measurements, and were like, all right, I need this, and they're like, you now have this replicated like 1800s sailing uniform or 1700s sailing uniform.
It's so weird. It's so weird that they have it. It's like it leads me to have really weird continuity questions. I do not vibe with that. It's like so weird to go from having this really great prologue sequence to then like we're doing this. But I guess that leads me to my main theme of the whole movie is that choices were made. in the writing of this film, choices were made.
And by God, they weren't changing them. They were committed. It's like there's so many of these, like I feel like in the initial pitch meeting where somebody was like really in love with these specific things that had to be in the movie. Like the door opening up and there's a big giant spider.
I mean, so this wasn't even the only pitch they had for this movie. So just imagine how bad the other pitches were.
I don't know, man.
And like, okay, we need to. We're losing track of this because we hate this movie so
then
much.
So at the very end of that scene, we get Picard seems to be very disturbed because
Yeah.
he receives a message, and he gets so disturbed that he like yells at Will, like on the bridge in front of everybody. Like,
Yeah,
gasp! He's rude. What could have happened?
and like he's just like telling Will to basically run the ship while he just f's off in his office.
And like Shatner, God, Stewart's performance is really good throughout this whole film. But in particular, I feel like at the beginning of the movie, we've never really seen Picard like this, except in a very few select instances. And they've all involved his family when that has happened. Which is really weird for somebody who doesn't seem like a family man or someone who for so long was known as a character that hated children, which is interesting.
Anyway, so apparently, like Starfleet sends emails to their officers where it's like, "Hey, by the way, your family burned alive."
You
like
have grief counselors on your ship.
What?
Do not tell them. Send them an email.
Hey, so the Federation, the captain of the Federation's flagship, his family just burned alive. Let's just shoot him a quick email and not tell anyone on his crew.
Let's just send them a form letter and they'll figure it out.
Yeah, they'll figure it out. They're all adults.
God. Wasn't a video call to kind of like soften it up a little bit?
Right? Like you would think it would have been at least. Yeah, like you would think it would have at least been like an admiral, like Jean-Luc. You're not allowed to be captain for a couple of days.
Sister-in-law.
Yeah. Well, no, she burned alive too.
She didn't. They don't establish that. They only establish Renee and his brother. They do not say anything about his sister-in-law at all. They don't mention her at all in the movie.
That's weird. That's also weird.
Also, thank you, Jeff Terry, for liking the stream. We appreciate it.
So, like, what is happening? Anyways, I just question that decision. But I think as far as an arc goes, they established a pretty interesting idea that they've extended from the series. But I think this is a part of one of my problems with the movie itself. And part of the reason why I think this movie doesn't work versus why, say, most of the original series movies work. The original series movies, although they build off of the world that was established and the characterizations that were established, the arcs of the characters originate within the context of those films. This, in order to understand the arc for this movie, you have to understand sort of the journey I feel like that Picard has had over the course of the series. And if you don't know that arc and how he has changed and softened as a person,
and I feel like there's
him is weird.
Because I feel like there's 2 episodes you have to watch, otherwise this feels very off. And that's Family, the episode that comes after Best of Both Worlds, where he goes to the family farm. And I don't know the name of it, but when he gets the nice geologist girlfriend.
There's a 3rd episode, too, that happens in season 7. It's the second, I do not remember the name of the episode, but it's the second Damon Bach episode. And it's where he makes Picard think he has a son.
Yeah, an illegitimate son, yeah.
So that he can murder him. And, and get back at him.
Yeah. And I agree. I forgot about that episode.
Yeah, exactly. But it's not particularly memorable, but it is a good episode. But it's like you have to know sort of that progression of who Picard is as a person for it to land. And also, like, we don't really meet his family in the movie. Like, Renee shows up later on during the Nexus sequence.
For like 3 seconds.
Yeah, exactly. But it's like, and I have words to say about that entire thing, but we'll get to that. But like, I feel like part of the reason why his arc, although I think is a good idea, doesn't feel like it particularly works is because it's not rooted in something that we see. It's rooted in something that we infer.
Yes.
So we are told that this stuff matters to Picard, but we don't see the thing. Like, we don't ever meet his family.
Like, it's all just put on Patrick Stewart's shoulders to just like show his. And like, don't get me wrong,
he does a very good job.
Like, if you're gonna ask Patrick Stewart to carry a role without like really he's gonna do it, and he's gonna do it well.
Well, I think you need a different establishing scene there. Or maybe
you do need a different establishing scene.
So now again, not to advocate for the cutting. I was just talking about the prologue, or at least move the devastating news somewhere else. So, and maybe have a conversation about who he thinks his surrogate family is, being there on the bridge, but maybe get some small maybe a small conversation with Deanna about some things maybe he would have wanted to have happen, and then you drop the news, because then at least the audience members that have no context of those episodes at least are brought in, and then you can move forward. But it literally is fun time for an awkward fun time news, and if you don't know who John Luke is, you're gonna be like, what is this deal? I don't know what he got, but who is this asshole, right? You're kind of set against him if you have no idea who he is. So I agree.
Yeah. Whereas, say, if we contrast this to the first original series movie in the motion picture, like the motion picture, I think, is a really good example of how Generations sort of goes around. The motion picture, I think, works better as a movie than Generations, in that. So they both contain an extended prologue sequence of things happening before we get to our main cast. And the entire first 15-20 minutes of that is just dedicated to establishing Kirk's arc. It's setting up who he is, what he wants, what he knows, and the lie he tells himself. And Picard, it's so messy. Like, they don't do a good job of establishing who Picard is, because they just assume that we know who he is to begin with. They assume that we understand that he's not really a family man, but he does love his family, and so it's really affected by him. And for some reason, he's really attached to this idea of family legacy and what it means to lose that, and his mortality, that he sort of... Because it never comes out and says that the movie is thinking about his mortality, even though the movie is about mortality.
Yeah, and that... all right, I kind of want to skip over talking about the first act. And I know that's crazy. But there's a reason for that. Because we've been talking about this for 30 minutes. And I want to go to bed before midnight. So...
You'll get to bed before midnight.
So, will we? Because we've only talked about the first 20 minutes of this movie.
All right, then get us along then.
All right, I'm just going to get us along here. So the big plot of this movie is about Data getting his emotion chip. And so Data is learning, and that's been a big arc. But again, that goes to Kyle's point, where this movie has been all about looking to stuff from the show and continuing arcs in this. Even though the show just had 10 days before this film started, wrapped up the show. So, like, already we are establishing on multiple levels that this movie is reaching back to the show that they've already established, and so it's kind of a long episode of the show, but really it's a movie, but really it's a show.
That didn't help at all.
Yeah, we still
All right, so moving on.
What, erase on the emotion chip?
Yeah.
I actually think that scene works.
I think it does too, and I think it's fine.
It's just weakened by the Beverly joke thing. It's stupid, but from there on,
and like, and a lot of that is the comedic relief of the show of this movie is Data.
Well, it also needs to establish a reason why he doesn't help Geordi, because we need Geordi to be a damsel in distress for the second act to work, in order for Picard's choice to give himself up.
Not
reason for all of this to work.
Not only that, but they literally had an episode where almost this exact same thing happened to Geordi LaForge.
Oh yeah, yeah. He just wasn't a Manchurian candidate this time.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's personally, I think the emotion chip plot is really dumb. I think that it works within the context of this movie, but I think as a whole, I don't like it because, like, you're right, Trevor. They wrap up the whole. They wrap up a lot of Data's arc in the show and his desire to be more human. And although the emotion chip stuff, like, sort of works in the movie, I think it's dumb. Like, he doesn't need a chip for him to feel in order to be more human.
It also establishes like that one of like the most important aspects of Data becoming human is now the comedic beat of the movie.
Yeah, which is dumb. Although I will say that, and I've said this on Twitter now, the experience of him drinking this awful liquid, realizing that he hates it, and then asking for more is exactly how I feel about this movie.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's maybe.
Yeah. No.
Oh God! There's so many things I hate about this movie. All right.
So, and it's also in this act where Picard meets Soren, where there's a Romulan attack on the space station. The Romulans were looking for this new thing called trilithium. The Enterprise basically quarantines the whole thing because they want to figure out what's going on. Soren can't get to his lab. That's our first little arc, and then the Duras sisters attack. And like Data gets scared, and he can't help Geordi, and Geordi gets captured, and then Soren ends up with the Klingon somehow. I forgot how that even happened.
Well, because Geordi and Data were over there investigating.
Oh yeah, and Soren beamed over.
Yeah,
like he snuck over somehow.
Yeah, and Data like malfunctions because of the emotion chip, and then he's scared.
He feels fear for the first time, and he has no idea how to react to it.
And this is the part where, like, so I'm watching the movie with Robin, and she's talking about it, and she brings up a very good point, and she's like, I feel like the movie was setting up a different plot than what actually happens, because we then go into the second act where we learn about the Nexus, and we learn about Soren's plan that he's going to blow up a star to divert the Nexus so that it can intersect the land so that he can get absorbed by it. And so that he can be reunited, I'm assuming reunited with his family that he lost to the Borg. And we learn from Guinan that essentially this is a wonderful place. It's basically nirvana. If you go to it, you will never want to leave it. They establish that. And where she goes is she's like, they've just spent this first half of the movie explaining to us Data's arc, that Data is a being that does not feel emotion, and he's willingly taken the emotion chip so that he can feel emotion. So then if we remove the emotion chip, he can be the perfect person to go into the Nexus because he'll be able to resist its urges to keep you there and do the things.
You know what? I unfortunately can't give Robin this, and it's not because that's not a good plot. That's too smart for this movie.
I agree.
But it is just it is sitting right there.
And so, and you know what? And that goes into my first huge major issue with this movie, and the villains are the Duras sisters.
They're the B villains, though. Soren is, or Time is the main villain.
No, they are not the B villain.
That stalks you.
They are not. They are in fact the A villains of the movie. They are the prime. You want
is Soren?
No, he's not. You want to know why Soren's not the antagonist of the movie? Because Soren does not kill a main character. The Duras sisters kill the Enterprise D.
No,
the Duras sisters
die halfway through the movie, and we never see them
That's some
again.
flawed logic, baby. The Duras sisters wouldn't even be there if it wasn't for Soren.
So, but
There's a direct cause for them being there. They're only shooting on the Enterprise to stall and give him time.
This is why I'm saying the Duras sisters are the primary antagonist. Who cares about Soren's... No, I'm serious. Who cares about Soren's stakes? Tell me the stakes of what Soren is doing. He's going to blow up a plane. He's going to cause the destruction of a civilization that we've never seen before and don't care about. The Duras sisters are actively trying to kill the main cast. And not only actively, they're doing a better job than literally any other villain we have ever seen in the entire TNG series.
Why didn't they modulate the shields, though?
Why didn't they modulate the shields?
That bugs the hell out of me. Sorry, continue, but that...
No, like, and that's my point, is that the Duras sisters are literally now as big a threat as the Borg when it comes to the Enterprise crew. They die, true, but so does the Borg ship, Kyle. So does the Borg cube.
Yeah, but the Queen didn't.
Yeah, but she wasn't in. She didn't exist. But that's another problem with the movie, though, is that the Duras sisters are a bigger threat to the cast than Soren is, who is supposed to be the main villain.
He enabled that threat.
Yeah,
that's like no, that's like Thanos giving Loki an Infinity Stone. Yeah. Thanos is still the bigger baddie, or he's the bigger problem, structurally. But in the moment, yes, right there for your crew, Loki's the one leading in charge of the Chitauri fleet coming through into New York. That's what the Duras sisters are in this.
Yeah, but this would be like Thanos is going to wipe out half of the galaxy, but it's the half of the galaxy that you've never seen before.
Mm-hmm. What if
like that's what we're talking about. No, that's exactly what this is.
We've never met everybody on Earth. Okay.
Yeah, but we've seen Earth. It's been the planet we visited most.
Okay. But that's
it's a planet. They don't even show you what this species looks like.
I know, it's the best part. That goes to like sort of my main problem with this movie is that. So one, I feel like it's thematically confused. It's like it wants to be about mortality, but it's not really. I don't feel like it does a good job effectively explaining that, because like both captains that we're dealing with are dealing with their regret of not having had a family because they are older and they're like looking back on their life and they're regretting things, and death has made them think about these things, but like that part never really like resolves or lands.
Nope.
It doesn't really change any of their decisions.
Nope.
So I feel like it's thematically confused, and I feel like even though the stakes are clear, they are not stakes we care about, because
who gives a crap?
Yeah, we don't know what the Viridians look like. We don't know who they are. We don't have a personal connection to them. We forget about them probably like several like minutes after we mention them, because we never talk about them ever again. They don't matter to us. What matters to us is the crew of the Enterprise,
mm-hmm.
Which I think objectively is the reason why we care. I think it's the reason why we're supposed to care in the last act, because we see them blow up, and so we know that if we don't stop Soren, now that the Enterprise crew is going to die.
And I've got another. This is a dumb one, and you guys can make fun of me for this one. This one, I will admit that you guys can make fun of me for. All right, so I'm skipping ahead. Kirk and Picard.
The third act.
We're just going into it. So Kirk and Picard are trapped in the ribbon. They're not trapped in the ribbon because apparently they can leave whenever they want. Okay, so they can leave the ribbon whenever they want. And so Picard apparently chooses the moment to leave, to return to, is just before he got beaten up by Soren. So he needs Kirk to jump in to win a fist fight for him.
Well, that's because if
But never mind that. It's that apparently you could travel to any point in time. So why didn't Picard just travel like 2 weeks ahead to keep his family from getting burned alive?
well,
And knowing exactly what Soren would do,
two thoughts on that. So
there wouldn't be a movie.
So one, I agree with you completely. The Nexus.
I like Kenny's reaction.
The Nexus is like it's dumb because it's not well defined. The rules are not laid out for us, so that they can do anything that they want, which is part of the reason why they also choose to leave, because they can do anything they want and nothing matters. So it kind of works for the plot, but also it doesn't work because we don't know, because like it would make sense logically if like, well, you can leave the Nexus anytime you want, but you can only go to places that the Nexus itself has been. So it would make sense in that context that like, well, that's why we can only go back to Viridian 3, because that's where the Nexus has been, so we can only go back to that point. So
point of order then? Why couldn't they just...
that?
Yeah, they don't establish any of that.
Like, Guinan says, time has no meaning here, so you can go back to anywhere, anytime you want.
But I mean,
so
also there's so many questions of that.
Yeah.
Because like, where is it going to drop you out at? Because I mean, where it picked up was okay. See, when you said that, I thought about that when I was watching. I was like, why doesn't he just go back to the bridge of the Enterprise and just like fire on the planet, because they'll know where it is finally.
Yeah.
Because that would make sense.
Yeah, and then then they can handle that together. Yeah, maybe the saucer still breaks apart and it crashed, but you'll still be alive, whatever. But to the whole family, God, that just...
Yeah.
And like it would have been... I don't know how you can figure, because like there's so many things about the Nexus I'm very confused about, because I thought it was perfect happiness, because the way Guinan described it, she was like, I've tried very hard to forget about it. But Kirk, like within like 10 minutes of being in the Nexus, was like, yeah, this kind of sucks.
I timed it. It took less time for Picard to realize he was in the Nexus and decided to leave than it took for the entire like crash sequence of the Enterprise. It took them longer to blow up the Enterprise and crash it than for Picard to realize that this Nexus thing was not for him.
And like I don't... So like what are Kirk and Picard like? Just these titans of men who can resist like this moment of perfect happiness?
So I think that this goes to a couple things. One, how ill-defined the Nexus is, and what is defined is not followed through with. Also, I think that it goes to sort of...
I have a big head and little arms. This wasn't a very well thought out plan.
It's the one sort of the core philosophy of the Berman era Trek, which is that the humans are perfect humans and all that stuff. And so therefore, because they're perfect humans, once they realize this is fake, they no longer want to participate in it. They realize that there are other things that are more important to them. And that makes sense for the character, but it's just not a very good story, in my opinion.
In everyone's opinion.
Yeah, but like...
except for Berman.
Yeah. It also, like, so much stuff about the Nexus bothers me. So, for one, with Picard's bit, his whole arc has been talking about his family and how he doesn't want to be, he needs family, he needs legacy, all this stuff. He misses Renee and his brother and all that. And so when he gets there, the moment I feel like the moment where he says bye to Renee and he decides that he's going to give up this fantasy and go save people with the risk of possibly dying in the effort. I feel like that's supposed to land harder and that's supposed to hit. Like that's a bit a beat that's supposed to matter. but frankly, it's a beat that if you're not paying attention to it, you will completely miss in
Yeah.
the way that the movie is presented. Like, this is supposed to be sort of like a completion of an arc of of Picard realizing what actually matters, and what matters is him being able to make a difference on the bridge and for him to save people. And that although having a family and having a life, a normal life, would be good, that is not his life, and that is not the life he has chosen, and therefore this is not the life he can choose now. And we get none of that. Like, it just doesn't hit and it doesn't land, and it's just a completely missable thing that happens. And that also goes into what happens with Kirk in his Nexus experience, which even as a kid watching this movie, which this was like the first, like, this is the first Star Trek movie for me that was like my Star Trek movie that got released in a time in which I could really remember and experience these things. And even then, everything about Kirk's bit just didn't feel right. I couldn't articulate it then why it didn't, but now, like, Kirk's whole arc throughout these movies has been about his found family and his mortality and facing that mortality and coming through the other side. And even though he is tired by the end of it, it's his crew and the bridge of the Enterprise is his family and it's his home. It is where he is happiest. And instead, we flash back to some random cabin in somewhere that we've never
in Montana with some lady we've never even heard of.
Yeah, and this is also, I did the math. This is supposed that he names specific times, like 9 years prior and 11 years prior. So this happens in between the motion picture and the Wrath of Khan, is when this is supposed to have happened. Which also raises really weird continuity questions, because that means that after the motion picture and before the Wrath of Khan, that he apparently left Starfleet, which doesn't feel like that's at all true. Because, like, when you come back to Kirk in the Wrath of Khan, he feels lost and purposeless. So why would he go back to Starfleet if he knew that was his purpose? So it just, like, it raises a whole bunch of weird continuity character questions that I don't think the movie is prepared to answer or even ask. But it's just, the whole sequence is weird because it just doesn't feel true to the character.
It doesn't.
It just, like, I get Kirk wanting that, but we've already had those questions answered. We've already dealt with this.
And personally, for me, the part that I found the most galling was where Kirk is all like, "Yeah, I'm not really gonna leave. I don't really care about what you're talking about. I've saved the galaxy while you were running around in diapers."
I actually disagree with you. I think that was probably the most Kirk moment. I feel like Kirk has done his duty for king and country. Like, he is, like, that's one of the bits he even said. He literally says that in the Undiscovered Country.
So it's not. So this is why I have a problem with it. It's not that I ever feel like Kirk says, "I've done my duty. I have done above and beyond what is
no
expected.
regrets."
Yeah, I am done. For me, what's particularly galling is that Kirk just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, which, like, and I feel that, because it does feel like whenever Kirk does say stuff like that, it's like he's feigning it, and he doesn't really need to be convinced that hard.
Yeah, but no, this was a Kirk that truly did not give a shit. This was a Kirk who, minutes ago, literally, for him, minutes ago, it's already established in the movie, he could not stay seated while the Enterprise needed an experienced captain. But now he just doesn't give a shit? Alright, maybe dying changed him, but we have no reason to believe why dying would change him since he doesn't think he died.
That's a good point. That's a good point. But yeah, it's weird that he doesn't like go back to him being part of the Enterprise. Like that feels like that would be his nirvana. Like that would be the thing that he would do, but they don't. And that's probably because of the budget. Probably because that would be unfilmable. And I feel like that's a lot of the choices that were made in this movie weren't because of that's where the story would go. It does feel like, well, we've only got so much money, and
we've still got the Klingon ship, and we've still got the Klingon set and the Klingon uniforms. So those are the bad guys because we either have to use them or the Ferengi, and we're not using the Ferengi. That's what it feels like. That's what this whole movie feels like, is whatever they have laying around, that's what they built a movie around. And now that Kyle's talked about this a lot in production notes before and during this, and I can't unsee it.
And like,
I can't unsee it.
And so I think that's part of the reason why Kirk's death, like, to go back to what I was talking about at the beginning, I think that's part of the reason why Kirk's death kind of sucks. Is that we already got a good death for Kirk. So you've got to, if you're gonna kill him, then you've got to top the first death.
Yes.
And they don't. They do not at all. It's not even close.
It's three old men fighting on a mountain.
Yeah, it's bad. But it's better than the first time they shot it. So what we see is actually the product of reshoots and audience screen.
Oh my God.
The first bit was removed. So the first bit was similar. It was like the fisticuffs on the bridge. But Soren then shoots Kirk in the back while he's like fiddling with the gadget. And then Picard goes back up, and Soren ends up like they end up disabling the device, and you can see this all on YouTube if you want to watch it. But it's like 7 minutes long. But basically, they're fighting. They beat Soren. They're screwing with the thing. Soren shows up, shoots Kirk in the back, and then Picard. But they manage to stop. Picard gets to the missile. He turns the missile off. It misses. Soren tries to like jump up his thing and to get into the Nexus, and it misses. And then Picard shoots him, and then they have a similar conversation on the bridge, where Picard's basically like, "Stay with me, we'll get you to the Enterprise, we'll be okay," and then he dies. And that was not as good as what we did end up doing. This is the better version. And oh my was ad-libbed. That was a Shatner.
I just God in heaven, why?
The why is that this was how the movie started. This was the genesis idea, is killing Kirk.
No, I can appreciate that this movie was built around the idea of killing Kirk. I genuinely can. I think that's fine. What I don't think is fine is then you have a missile that can blow up stars. You mine one of the most Abbott and Costello villains from the TNG era to be there, and this is what you do? This is how you kill Kirk?
I also did not think about that explosion. That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't.
Which explosion?
The missile.
What about it?
What Trevor just said, if it can destroy a sun.
Okay,
unless you're saying the reaction is going to be different when it's in the sun.
I'm the kind of person that reads this stuff. So, yeah, so the reason why it does not blow up the planet, but it blows up the star is because of technobabble. Basically, the trilithium causes a specific catalytic reaction.
Hey, audience, you can just mute Kyle.
And that's the other thing that this movie does. This is the first Star Trek movie with actual, honest to God technobabble. Like, technobabble is inherent to the plot of this movie in a way that it is not at all in the other movies. And I think that's just because it's a product of the show. And really, I feel like on the whole, the movie doesn't work because of that. But also, in a way, kind of like that. And here's why. So this goes to the nature of Picard in this movie versus the ones in the other movies. The other movies, Picard is like Picard last action hero. Like, they make him into like a Terminator. Like, he is.
Yeah.
He's like, I mean, like bare arms, like shooting people, like ridiculous action that you absolutely never saw anywhere else.
Yes.
And it's because the format of TNG as like an ensemble, a thoughtful ensemble show, does not work as a movie. And Generations shows us why.
But so like I'm not even sure that's a fair thing to say, because I feel like the TNG movies could work as ensemble movies. Just don't make them action movies. No, because we know for a fact there's a Star Trek movie that worked as an ensemble. We have seen it. And it was the only Star Trek movie that was not an action movie.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean,
the Voyage Home is the only ensemble movie, truly ensemble movie from all the Star Trek movies.
Yeah.
Just don't make it an action movie. Just like, if you don't have the budget, don't try to be something you're not.
I could give you that. I think that's true. But they really pushed having like central antagonists. So there's just no way that you could do a movie with a central antagonist and be a true ensemble movie and also not be actiony. And with the nature of these movies and the way they're written, like in the show, Riker was always the action guy, Picard was always the thoughtful guy, and it was weird, the episodes where Picard was the action guy, because it was like they were like fish out of water stories, like the episode where he went undercover as an archaeologist with the Tomb Raiders people.
Yeah, and like he ended up working for like that mercenary pirate group.
Yeah, so like those were interesting fish out of water stories where things happened to Picard, but like that's not really his wheelhouse or his strength. And it shows in this movie where they put him up against Soren, and he just like is getting the piss beat out of him. And I think that's partly, honestly, because Shatner did a really good job of protecting himself and his image in these movies and making sure that he never kind of looked like a wimp or a pansy. And this is not to say that I think Stewart is a wimp or a pansy or anything, but Stewart is just a really, like, from everything I've read about him, he's a very giving professional. And if he thinks that doing X, Y, or Z thing is right for the character or right for the plot or right,
he's gonna do it.
He's gonna be game for it, even if that means him like Picard not looking like a macho action hero guy. Then he's gonna do it. But like it hurts him in this movie because I don't know. It makes the end satisfying.
It hurts him in this movie because Picard has to be rescued from Soren, not from some like super awesome, terrifying, incredible threat. No, from a guy who was able to get his hands on a weapon that can blow up a star and just wanted to see his family again.
Yeah, and instead he has to go back in time to find the only captain who can actually win a fist fight.
Yeah, that's it. And I'm just, I would love to get drunk with Ronald D. Moore and talk about this movie.
That would be very fun. But yeah, it's part of the reason why I think the later movies, like, although I love the later movies and I do enjoy them more than this movie, that part of the thing that has always bothered me is the relationship that I feel like they force on Data and Picard. Because Data is, if they're anything, they're more of like a father-son relationship or a
absolutely
relationship. But they try to make them like best friends. And they follow through with that in Picard, and it's weird because Geordi is Data's best friend.
Yeah, you know what? Honestly, it feels like to me, and you guys can disagree. It feels like they're going, man. You know, it was the golden age of Star Trek when Kirk and Spock were the core of it. So what if we just tried to like awkwardly force Picard to be Kirk and Data to be Spock, and then we built all of our movies around that?
It's absolutely that, and that they're the two most popular characters. So, and they're in effect the two leads, the lead and the co-lead. So, like, if you're writing a movie and you're breaking a story on this, and they are the lead and the co-lead, or the first up and second on the call sheet, like you've got to write your script according to that, and that works on a series. But in a movie, you've got to make that relationship work to make the core of the plot work, and so they had to do it that way. So
I really, really wish they'd come up with an idea that wasn't an action movie. Had they, I honestly, I feel like that all, like, from this point forward, Star Trek's number one problem is they're trying to make every movie an action movie. And sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't.
I was when I was watching it, I was like rewriting this in my head, and like, if I were gonna rewrite this movie, where would I start it at? And I was like, maybe I would start it at the point where Picard shows up in the Nexus, and then like a lot of the film is him sort of unraveling this lie that he's been living in, and like, because like it always bothers me that the Nexus is something that they're so easily able to snap out of, and like, what if the movie is a lot about him like trying to get out of this fantasy? But then I was like, oh, wait, but we kind of already saw that in the show.
I don't care, though. That would be
like, honestly, like reading over...
the decision to leave it more impactful.
Reading over this script, if I had been somebody at Paramount, who I would have taken the script and I would have just dropped it in the dumpster next to my desk. And I would have berated somebody angrily for giving it to me and for spending that much time on it.
Need a cue to Bart Simpson cake into a trash can.
So if you want to know an idea, so they had originally enlisted 3 pitches for this movie. One of the pitches was supposed to come from Michael Piller, who was the showrunner for TNG, and he ended up like passing on doing it because he didn't like the idea of competing with his writers. And so one of the others that pitched was Maurice Hurley, who effectively was the showrunner for season 2. And if you've watched the documentary Chaos on the Bridge, Maurice Hurley features prominently in that documentary. And so, and the pitch that he had, according to Memory Alpha, is that the film had Captain Picard recreating Captain James Kirk on the holodeck to help him solve a dilemma involving an interdimensional species wreaking havoc by crossing into our realm. That's all we know about it. They didn't pick it. I don't know if that would have been a better movie, but
that's a better premise.
Yeah, it solves, because like the dilemma that they had, honestly, is that they needed to do a passing the baton movie. They needed to have the old cast passing the baton to the new cast, and how are they going to do that with Kirk? And there's an obvious time discrepancy issue. So how are you going to bridge that? And both of those pitches involve like mechanics and how to do that.
I just don't understand.
It's a hard movie to write.
Well, I mean, what if they had just had V'ger coming back as part of a time dilation?
I don't know.
Like, they have options. They've already built one movie around time travel.
Yeah. But this is what we got, and turns out the fourth draft of it was written during the same time as All Good Things, and as they were writing them, the same writers, Brandon Braga and Ronald D. Moore, wrote both, and they apparently were getting the movie and the episode confused as they were writing them. They'd have to back up and go, wait, which script are we working on? All right.
Oh, of course.
That just makes me hate the movie more.
I know, the fact that like they spent like a year on this movie, and they spent like a month on All Good Things, and All Good Things is just so much better. But honestly, I think that's probably a testament to like I think that shows you how good something can be when you aren't having to deal with a lot of notes or a lot of studio constraints.
I hate this movie.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, although I still enjoy it.
Nah.
Most kids when they're growing up, they have Old Yeller. I had Star Trek Generations.
See, I think another issue for me is that the first, not just the first Star Trek movie, the first movie I remember seeing in a theater is Star Trek First Contact.
Same. Generations I saw on VHS, but yeah, it was the first movie that I like wept to. So yeah, there's a fun fact about me.
I cried. The first movie I cried to was Peter Pan because Tinkerbell almost died, and I clapped for her like furiously.
Peter Pan.
Mufasa
was the first one to do it for me.
I didn't want Tinkerbell to die.
That's a good one. Yeah.
No, like mine wasn't even the cartoon. It was like some like weird stage play that my grandmother had on VHS.
Nice.
I don't know where it came from.
Well, I guess, do we have anything else to say about this movie? This kind of a dumpster fire.
Why? Like, just
money. That's why.
Just like more of an existential why. Yeah.
I mean, you think you could have even come up with some.
I'm like
some temporal event that has brought them there for.
And they had
they will have to leave and go back through it by the end of the movie.
Like they couldn't
for a little bit. And
did they just not want to make Romulan uniforms? Because like they had a couple of Romulan antagonists they could have used. Like they had Tomalak and Sela. Like
they had a dead Romulan in this movie too, wearing the uniform.
Yeah, and I'm just like, why?
Because the Romulans attacked the observatory.
Yeah, no, I just like what. But then, like, I thought it would have been too much, but just, like, get rid of the Duras sisters and make it like Soren stole the device from the Romulans. The Romulans are hunting him. The Romulans want their device back, and they will blow up the Enterprise to keep anyone from knowing they have it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
But no, you can't. And, like, you got, like, a 3-way chess match.
Again, that helped nothing. But we appreciate the effort there. Yeah, I like Kyle. I like that.
And no, it does help. My coughs are just that loud.
Sure, buddy.
You want me to cough in front of the microphone? I'll cough.
What were you saying?
That's a little better.
I was holding it back.
So yeah, I like that pitch. Yeah, give me some kind of time distortion nonsense. No one has to die, but just send it back through the time, whatever the thing is. Just take Kirk out of it completely and just run with the ribbon. Or sorry, but your specific idea was like just start in the Nexus and have him have to go through memories to figure it out.
That would have been a much cooler movie, and like Picard like runs into Kirk in the Nexus.
Yeah, I mean, at a minimum, it would have been a cool 2-parter. Like, you know, maybe they're all like living in their own in the town, and it's all the crew and everybody, and they're running into each other. Like, you know, Kirk's the town like horse guy. I don't know.
Trevor.
He's really into horses.
Trevor,
he would be the town sheriff.
You can still have the prologue. You can have the prologue, explains how Kirk gets into this thing. We don't know what it is. You start Picard somewhere, right? I think you still have to start him somewhere that at least feels familiar to us. but then slowly but surely it starts to.
You mean on the bridge of a 18th century sailing vessel?
Like literally,
Right.
Picard dressed as dressed as like Sherlock Holmes or something like that in like the holodeck would have felt more familiar than that.
That would at least explain the Victorian costumes for children in the 24th century.
I had to look up and make sure that like his version of Christmas Carol wasn't like filming side by side, and they didn't just like ask some kids from that to like pop over, because I was like, what?
Yeah, the wardrobe was clearly stuffed in somebody's like closet in Paramount. Like what do we got? All right, this works.
I mean, I honestly, I do prefer it when they do stuff like that, though, rather than like, what is civilian clothes going to be like in the future? And then making up the weirdest, grossest, most awful. No, they're not. I've seen some of the outfits from DS9 and Voyager. They are not trying. Except for the dresses in DS9. Those are pretty good.
So Search for Spock and Voyage Home did a better job. That's what you're saying. Yep.
They did real good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think that my biggest problem with the movie is the Nexus, and if this is a thing that's motivating our primary antagonist to like kill a bunch of people, it feel like it's something that you really want to go to, and not
rather than Kirk and Picard getting out of it in 5 minutes,
and not just kind of like a sad holodeck program. Like, you tell me I'm wrong.
Oh, no, you're not. It's so bad.
Like, we have the holodeck, we have the technology. If you really want to,
why can't somebody just drug Soren a little bit so that he doesn't know the difference, and then just toss him in a holodeck?
Yeah, because it's just as real. Although, well, no, technically, no. His family died in the Borg. They didn't die in the Nexus. So yeah, so they're not there. So it's just as real there as it is in a holodeck.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Man.
It's rough.
It's a bad movie.
Anyways, next time it's gonna be First Contact, which is like
yeah,
that's gonna be a really short conversation because we're basically just gonna be like, yeah, this movie rules.
We're gonna like find dumb nitpicky things to complain about, and then it's gonna be
like the cavernous engineering. Like, it's just, it makes absolutely no sense that it is that big. It makes no sense.
Or like me freaking out about seating arrangements.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I don't know. I'm sure we can find dumb time travel nonsense to be mad at.
Chronoton particles.
Yeah, or like the fact that the Borg Queen that had never been established before now exists, and how it ruins the collective.
Yeah. Anyway, let's stop talking about First Contact. Hey, Generations. You suck. And you should feel bad.
I hate this. It's disgusting.
It's revolting.
It's revolting, yeah.
I will say a fun fact about my reviewing career, though. This has got to be one of the first. Confused Matthew. Do you remember Confused Matthew?
Absolutely.
This is one of his first videos.
It was the first one I watched of his for sure.
Oh man, I'm gonna have to dig that up because I remember it watching it, but I don't remember anything about it.
I didn't rewatch it for this, but that would have been.
Yeah, I might go back and rewatch that.
Or I'm gonna have to now.
It was good stuff.
Be better, Paramount. Be better.
Be best. Hashtag.
I just don't make Lower Decks your best TV show.
Hey, we've got Picard season 2, and we also we do have Strange New Worlds coming out, which I'm very excited for.
I don't.
We still gotta talk Picard. I know we're doing the movies, but that comment, I can't let that slide. I'm sorry.
I want to talk about Picard too because I really hate that.
We'll talk about it. Man, I have so many feelings about Picard. I'm really curious, having sat on him for a year, going back and rewatching it, how I'm going to feel about it.
I honestly, I think we're all going to be angry. I think we're going to be angry rewatching it.
I just feel like it sets up a lot of really interesting ideas and doesn't really follow through on them.
That could actually be Paramount Star Trek philosophy.
No, because like Discovery Season 1 doesn't set up anything interesting at all, really. Just kind of like, hey, we made a really good pilot. Now I guess we're going to make a show out of it after we fire everybody who had anything to do with the pilot.
And also make like Burnham the most confusing main character we've ever made. Whose actions make no sense.
Let's make a non like not even an ensign, like the main character of a show. What were they thinking? That was never going to work well.
But it's all better now. Yay.
Yeah, it is better.
Season 3 of Discovery is really good. Although my mom I watched like the season finale of Season 3, and my mom was watching with me. She has not watched any of Discovery at all. And she's watching the fight scene in Discovery where they're on the turbo lifts, and she asks, "Are they in a city?"
The only thing at this point I can accept as a reason for that is that they have the ship is bigger on the inside tech now, and that was part of it. It's absolutely the only thing that makes any sense, because it doesn't make any sense.
And I've tried to defend it. It just
doesn't. Like,
it's indefensible. I'm just like, and I didn't notice it until she said something, and the second she said it, I can't unsee it.
I noticed it as I was watching it, and I'm like, I'm just gonna roll with this because I'm really enjoying this. But there's absolute, like, the scale of it's just so off. It's so bad. It's not like and like I don't want to be nitpicky in that way, but like the scale is it's like gratuitously bad. It's not even like it's not a forgivable level of bad. So they've really got to like give me a line about it being bigger on the inside now or something. Like, just give that to me.
My hope that what I think they're going to do is they're going to show another shot of the inside of the ship, and it's going to look completely different. Like, they're just going to be like, whoops, didn't mean to do that.
I think you broke Kyle.
Because he knows that's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I just need some, like, some kind of continuity. And
but continuity gets in the way of action, Kyle.
This is a nitpick. I loathe the new uniforms on just a chemical, like, cellular level.
You're talking about for season 4?
Yes, like
they look puffy. They look like people wearing like big old overbox blazer stuff. It's what I'm like. What?
They look really bad. Like, I don't know how you had Admiral Vance's uniform look so good, and then everyone else's 31st century uniforms just look terrible, and they made it worse by making it all one primary color. It just, I don't know. I know why they did it. It's because they look. Anyways, it drives me bananas. They look bad.
I just really love that they just can't seem to not keep changing the uniforms in Discovery.
Well, they didn't for 2 seasons. They were the same for 2 seasons. They just gave us the Constitution class uniforms at the same time, just in season 2. Gave us their own take.
Which looks better.
They look great. Yeah, those were great. And honestly, the regular Discovery uniforms look good too. They reminded me of like Fallout Vault suits.
Yeah.
And it avoids the adjustment. Right. I mean, they're still tight as hell, but
They're extremely tight. The cast complained about them constantly.
all right, Kyle, want to wrap us out?
Yeah. So, um,
I need a drink.
I don't have my notes in front of me, so I don't remember our jargon. But
No worries.
we've got other shows on the Twitchies and on the podcasts, so watch them.
Folks, I guess one technical note. Check for the Facebook page because next week everything will still be on its normal schedule, but we're going to be changing some things around starting July 1st. So there'll be some shift for when Quorum is done, Commander Ship Show. State of Nerd Union will stay on the same night. We're just kind of shifting some things around because people are getting busy again, which is totally fine, but we got to adjust some things for people's schedules and things a little bit for the rewatches and the some of the other shows. But so, all right, just check on the Facebook page for that change.
And in 2 weeks, we talk about Star Trek First Contact.
Mm-hmm. Gonna be good. All right. See y'all later.